Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. I'm Catherine Llewellyn, your host for the show. And my beautiful guest today is Dr. Evette Rose, who I'm delighted to welcome to the show. Evette is the author of 21 books. She's a speaker, a holistic counsellor. She has worked with over 7,000 clients and thousands of students, uncovering one undeniable truth. Unresolved emotions profoundly impact our health, mental well-being, and physical pain. I think a lot of us realize this, but you have no idea what to do about it. So Evette's groundbreaking work explores 722 ailments and the emotional roots behind them. And she has taught self-help events in more than 43 countries. And she is not 98 years old, despite all that stuff that she's done. So, Evette, thank you so much for gracing us and coming on the show.
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I feel so welcomed. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all this incredible work you've been doing. I mean, in the pre-call, when I asked you, how on earth have you done that? And one of the things you told me was that you've got this quality of determination, your brand of that. Would you like to share with the listeners a little bit about your journey of determination? You know, how that quality kind of arrived in your life as something which was then really helpful.
Right. So I'm going to start right from the beginning, because determination right now for me is one of my core strengths. No matter what, somehow my head just locks in and I stay determined, and I have this immense amount of courage to do something, even though I feel scared. So it's like my body would be shaking, but my head is like laser focused and I'll go, right? No matter what. And when I was growing up, I actually had a very challenging father, right? So he was a self-medicated drug addict. He was an alcoholic. He was also a clinically diagnosed sociopath. And I know this because I found by accident, I actually found the hypnosis tapes that he was undergoing with his psychotherapist. And that's where the diagnosis was given. I don't know if you remember back then, Catherine, back in the days when we had these tapes, right? We were recording songs, and, we made love tapes, friendship tapes, and we listened to the radio station, and then we quickly hit record when our favorite song comes on. Right. So I was recording, I was making a tape for my friend, and I just saw my dad's name on it, and I thought, what is this? I was scratching around. And then as I was listening to the tape, I heard his voice, and I thought, well, this is really interesting. And that's where I heard he was speaking to his psychiatrist, and that's where the diagnosis came out. Can you believe it? Like in that short moment, of course I was listening for about 5-10 minutes, but I caught that moment. And so I went to the library.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 13.
My God, what a shock.
As 13 going to 13. 13 going to 14. It not at the time, because I had no idea what it meant. So, back then we didn't have Google. So I went to the library. I feel so old saying that. I went to the library to find out, what does this term mean? And when I read what it meant, everything just made sense. Everything just started to make sense. Now I understand why my dad's different to my friends' fathers. Now I understand why parents wouldn't want their children to come play at my house, because he had such a reputation. He really built such a terrible reputation for himself. And despite that, he had an exceptionally high IQ. So he was so good at his job that people would just put up with this nonsense, because he was just so good at what he did. Now, his behavior was tough to deal with, because I never saw him sober, right? I would wake up to school, I would just give a wave, and then that's it. I might hear him come back drunk, throwing things around, screaming and shouting. I might sleep through it, I don't know, and then I'll see him the next day. So he was the type of that. He didn't know when it was my birthday. He never knew how old I was. He never came to my birthdays to begin with, or spend Christmas with us, but we all lived in the same house. right? So this was the dynamic. And the interactions that I did have with him was hell-bent. It was hell-bent. And he made it very clear to me that how much he hated me and what a financial nuisance I am, and all that he wants to do is have his freedom, and I'm taking that away from him, and that he would wish I was dead. So he said that quite a lot to me. Yeah, quite a lot. So when something has been a part of your life from the get-go, and you don't have a reference outside of you to understand that what you are receiving, that harshness, that aggression is not normal, right? So that becomes your normal. And I think a big part of me learned how to become robust when you live a life that's against the odds. And when I say that, I mean in relationship to having a father that never saw your achievements. And if he did, it will be picked apart. And so there was this specific moment, Catherine, a specific moment that I will never forget. And it was during that age, that short time frame when I found out about his diagnosis, when I came home and he was supposed to pick me up at school. He probably has done it twice in his life. But that one time that but my mom really needed him to help, was he forgot and he passed out on the couch and he was drunk. He didn't go to work because he was sick. And so I walked for 5 kilometers in a very highly dangerous area in South Africa with my suitcase back to school, up from school back home. And most people who would live there and knew the area where I was walking would be like, "You did what?" So I was very scared when I was walking. I was aware of my environment, who's where, what. So my environment also wired me to feel vigilant, to be aware of my surroundings. There was a lot of apartheid also just, was freshly ended. So there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of animosity in terms of getting the culture to just come together. And it was tough. It was very tough times. And then having my dad on top of that as well. And when I got home, I remember as I walked back, a BMW drove past me and I fell in love. I thought, wow, look at that woman with the hair and the glasses, and she's driving her BMW. She's just oozing this confidence. She's just oozing this, this I have it all together. You just get some of these people that just do it really well, and she did. And I thought, wow, it captivated me. And I got home and I said, and I didn't even go off about him not picking me up, because I would expect that from him, right? There was no hope of him coming. And I said, "Dad, I saw a BMW when I walked home." And he's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw a BMW. And you know what, Dad? I'm going to buy one before I am 19. I really want a car like that." And my dad laughed and he said, "You will wipe off the vomit off the floors in the pubs where I drink, you stupid child." And that was his response. And I remember standing there, I'm brimming. I was so excited because I felt like, what an awesome goal to have, because I felt so goalless my life. I was just fighting to survive and, keeping it all together. And now I'm seeing this beautiful car and, wanting to chase the dream and the feeling and all of that. And something in me switched. I used to be quite passive, just trying to be the peacekeeper, just go with the flow, because I forgot to add my dad was quite violent as well. So you choose your words wisely. You choose your moments wisely. He would come home and he put the keys on the table and I can tell you exactly how that night's going to end. The way that he pulls his car in front of the house, I can tell you. But if his car is just a little bit to the right, I know exactly what's going to happen, because he had OCD as well. So he would go out sometimes and park the car 6 times just to get it into the right position. And then he's already upset and drunk at the same time. And I remember that night, I was lying in my bed and I looked at the roof and it was dark. And I just kept holding on to this feeling and I made this decision. I'm going to get that car and I'm going to get that lifestyle no matter what. Living like this with a father like that and have a husband like that, to have this life, this will not be mine. I will be from it, but this pattern ends here. And there came this incredible strong fight response, like a really strong fight response, because I realized with him, the only way to feel safe and strong is to go into that fight or flight state, that defensive, angry state, not the collapse, people pleasing anymore. Something in me, Catherine, just switched that day. And so I held on to that fight. And a few things happened. I don't know how much we should probably go into it, but a few things happened and I had to leave school. It was safety wise, it just wasn't safe for me to be at school anymore because a few kids, ganged up on me and it just didn't play out the way that I wanted it to. my life, my teenage years, which was actually a good thing because now I was at home. I was fully focused. I studied so hard. I ran 2 jobs at the same time to pay for my college fees, which I was saving for because we couldn't afford private school either. So I was literally studying through distant learning. So I was in Kimberley and I was doing distant learning through Johannesburg. And I would just go to a small little college and write my weekly tests for just 1 hour, and that was it. And I kept working these 2 jobs, cleaned bookshelves. I was a cashier. I did it all. And I saved enough money to go to college. And I studied my business management. And I applied for a job. And I graduated when I was 17. Thank goodness for that, because I requested early graduation and they granted me that because my marks were high enough. So I saved money by skipping that 1 year. So I could skip grade 11, so straight to grade 12, did my studies, did it all, graduated when I was 17. In South Africa, it's normally when you're 18. And I got a job at a very prestigious diamond mining company. And I ended up taking a position being the project, the assistant to the project manager and overseeing, 2,000 people. And we were 4 women and 2,000 men. 4 women and 2,000 men. It's not fun walking in the dark 5 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold weather from your car park, which happens to be 800 meters to where your office is, on site, on a mining site. It was nerve-wracking. But this fight response, this anger that I started to tap into, this was my old determination. And this is what got me through. And Catherine, I worked there for 3 months and I worked so hard that this determination allowed a very prestigious man to see my work ethics and how hard I worked. And he said to me, and he was the client of the company, and he came to me and he said, Evette, I want you on our private airplane in Johannesburg in 2 weeks. I'll quadruple your salary. I'll give you an apartment. I'll give you a car. I need you on my program. I need you on my project side. We are in trouble. Catherine, I packed up. I said yes. I had no idea what I was saying yes to, but I said yes. I'm thinking I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to Johannesburg because there's no future for me in that town where I was. And so I borrowed my mom's car. And I said, I'll pay your car payments. Can I just use your car for 2 to 3 months? Because in Johannesburg, there's no public transport. If you don't have a car, you're done. And she said, okay, we'll do this. We'll figure it out. And so my mom helped me. She ended up taking a carpool to her work to help me, right? That's my mom, go mom. And I remember driving in that car, Catherine, to my job, the directions to the office and it was stuck on my steering wheel. It was before GPS. And I remember sitting in that car and my arms are shaking and I'm looking and I'm crying because I've never in my life driven on a highway. I'm from a town and I'm driving on a highway where people are screaming at me. I'm driving 60 kilometers an hour and they're saying, and I'm getting the middle finger and road rage. And I didn't know in which lane am I supposed to be going, and I'm seeing cars flying past me. And so I figured one is fast, one must be slow, and I'm like, what's the 2 in the middle? I had no idea. And so So I'm figuring out how this works. Like, what is an off ramp? All of that. But this incredible rage in me of this FU to my dad, because that's exactly what stayed in my head. That was my mantra. That was my mantra, Catherine. And I kept going. And long story short, my career just skyrocketed. It skyrocketed. I was 6 months into it and I was earning so much that I had 2 apartments. And one was in Johannesburg, one was in Vereeniging, which was in another coal site that we had there. And I worked hard. I worked 85 hours a week. I was exhausted, but I gave it my all. And you know what? Before I was 19, long story short, so I kept working. Before I was 19, I custom designed a 318 Ti BMW. I actually had a say in how I wanted that car to be put together. And I pulled that car off of the floor with 9 kilometers on its speedometer. And I'll never forget that day. And I drove, and I bought it in Johannesburg, and I drove from Johannesburg to Vereeniging. And I was driving 240 kilometers an hour on that highway. And I'm just like, F you, Dad. And I'm just like, yeah. I had my sunglasses on. I did the whole thing of what this woman did with her hair and all of it. I was absolutely ecstatic. And so this was my, you can do this, Evette. This anchored in my anger, not a good thing, but it anchored in my anger as validation that with this anger, you can do anything, Evette. With this determination, you can get it all. And I held on to that.
Amazing.
Long story short, that anger landed me in hospital with a stress-induced heart attack when I was 29. And that's when at that time I had my, international personal development company. I had a beautiful house in the French Polynesian Islands. All my neighbors were millionaires. I was doing really well. Back then, being 29 and, like around 2009, 2010, I know now people that age, being a millionaire is easy now. But back then, to hit that 7 figures at that age, we did really well. I did well. I got a business partner and just quit corporate and just went into my personal development journey. And that's when I was lying there and the doctor came into my room and he threw a white box of pills on my bed and he said, "Get out of my hospital. You do not have a heart problem. You have a goddamn stress problem." And he left. And he gave me Valium. So I left. But I left a different person because I realized this anger was camouflaged by eustress, what's called positive stress. When we start to tick the boxes, this dopamine that's released, we're getting things done, it's great, we're thriving off of this high, and it masked the anger, the rage that I was feeling, that rage. And I gave up the business. I did, of course, all the right things by everyone involved. I did the right thing, walked away from the business. I walked away from the house and I moved with the 2 suitcases to Bali. And I deeply reevaluated my relationship with rage and anger. And that's where I started to heal my relationship with determination. Because a lot of the times, and the reason why I'm sharing this story is a lot of people often confuse determination with this fight, this anger. I can do, I can go. But that's a wounded determination. And I went on this journey and I turned that determination inside out, where I can now be determined with ease and grace.
Yeah.
And not with fight and flight. Yeah. So that's my journey with determination.
How extraordinary. I just want to congratulate you for that turning point where you rose up to face, because you did not choose an easy path at that point. You'd had a difficult path up to that point, but you chose a path where you actually worked really, really hard for a long time. And I think, I don't know, a lot of people would not be prepared to do that. They would not have the, you were saying that the rage gave you the energy for that.
Oh, that cortisol, that was my gasoline.
Yeah, but you've still kept the, I just want to ask you, I think you said something like stress or something. You said
Yeah, that's positive stress. That's when we have you have negative stress, the stress that makes you feel, oh, this is not good, I don't like this, I feel anxious, I feel depressed. And then you get stress, where people get stressed, but they actually feel motivated by it. They get excited, like, this is okay, yeah, let's get excited, let's go jump, let's go up and down, high five, are you ready? Yes, let's go. This is more these people. They actually have a positive association with stress. So your mindset and how you feel in relationship to stress is going to change your relationship with that stress, and also how it impacts your body. But I want to add one more fun thing, Catherine, that you're going to absolutely love. So I had to sell the BMW when I moved from South Africa to Australia. And then I lived in the US for 3 years, and I bought another BMW. I bought another BMW that it was just my, it was my anchor. It was my anchor. And I think I kept it for 2 years still in storage when I left the US, because just knowing it was there, and no matter how hard my life got, you can do it. You can do it. And because it was paid off. So it was just sitting there. So I gave it to a single mom with 3 kids. I gave it to her as a gift and said to her, may this also be your gift to never give up, because it was to someone that was really not doing well in their life. And I was never going to go back to the US. I was never going to drive it. I couldn't be bothered trying to sell and go through the shenanigans. And so I passed on the message. And yeah, it's a journey. And would I buy another one? Absolutely. If I get the chance, yes, but not in Indonesia. The roads here, no, it's not going to work.
you do have to pay attention to the actual roads that you have, don't you?
Yes, exactly. You can't just drive.
I had a very beautiful car for a while, and I realized that where I was living, the car was just a liability. It was beautiful.
Really,
It was a liability. You couldn't
yeah.
burst down the country lanes in it. Well, you could, but it would take a very long time. And everyone is screaming. So you're right. You have to pay attention to where you are. But I think that's great. Sometimes there is a physical thing which represents something, isn't there? And for you, it was that beautiful BMW.
Yeah.
And
it was a lifesaver, to be honest with you. It was an absolute lifesaver, because living in the household that I was living in with my father, let me tell you, that suicidal thought was always in the back of my mind. It was always in the back of my mind. And this new determination with this goal, Catherine, it really flipped my world from a different angle in such a positive way. And that's why when I always speak to people who's really going through bad times, I can't stress enough how important it is to have that ultimate goal. To just have that ultimate goal, and every day feel like you have it, right? And that's what I did. I lived in the future. Is it a good thing? Probably not, because it can cause you to maybe dissociate often from your reality. But when people grow up in violent circumstances where there's alcohol, where there's drugs involved, and you're a child and there's nothing that you can do about it, I don't care. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Live in that future. Live in that escape. We can correct things later on, because I think alive today because of that strategy. It absolutely saved me. And it had a positive outcome. Even though I had a bit of hiccups along the way, I ended up turning my life into an incredible success, even though I was living my life in resistance to avoiding what my parents went through. So my motivating factor was not healthy. It was from a state of resistance and not being in the flow, not feeling worthy of having what I want. Yeah.
So it was a strategy that was right for that moment for you.
Yes, it was.
And now you've got
It absolutely was.
a completely different relationship with determination.
Dude, it's healed.
That
It's healed
story you
relationship.
told is just, obviously it's very touching. And I really appreciate you sharing it. And it's also very encouraging and inspiring, because I think all of us sometimes meet a point in time where we feel things are against us. We're not supported. We feel helpless. We feel undervalued, and we can go one way or the other.
That's true.
And
That's
now,
very true.
you do this incredible work around emotions and health and everything else. So I would love you to tell us a bit about that, but would you tell us a bit first about how you transitioned into that?
That's such a great question. So this is where my determination, one more time, this happened before the heart attack. So I was around 23, 24, just moved from South Africa to Australia. And I worked so hard. I worked really hard again to have it all, and ended up in a beautiful 17-acre home, with 6 bedrooms, tennis court, jacuzzi, swimming pool, you name it. I had such a good life, and I worked so hard for it. I was that kind of employee where I was doing 3 people's jobs just so that they cannot fire me, to make sure that I'm going to have my security. And I worked hard. Oh, good God, Catherine, I worked hard. But what happened was I started to adapt to my father's coping strategies, which happened to be alcohol. So I started drinking to cope with the anxiety, the depression, and the stress, what I was feeling and struggling with. Because when you work so hard and all that you see is your computer screen, 4 walls, and here you're sitting on this incredible piece of property that you barely have time to enjoy because you're so exhausted and all that you do is work. And of course, I chose a partner who was violent and an alcoholic as well. Yeah. And it was tough times. So between work and then going home to a life where I realized that I'm stepping right back into my childhood. And at that point, I was so exhausted. I was so exhausted. I felt so unresourceful that I said to my partner, I'm ill, I'm not going to go to work, and I'll see you later. I called my boss and I left all my passwords, I left all my projects, everything on the voice machine, because I decided that I was going to end it that day. I was so clear in my head that I cannot and I will not live another day like this. And I sat there in front of the computer, back then, these big Dell clunky computers with the big keyboards. And I'm sitting there with my cigarette, and I'm already at my second shot of vodka. And I sat there and I'm thinking, how do I end this? How do I end this painlessly? Because I hate pain. And I'm an atheist at this point as well. So at least for me, I'm thinking I'm going to go nowhere. At least there will be stillness, right? And I was raised Christian. So my father was the drunk Christian with the Bible under his arm. Hence why I ended up an atheist. And I typed in it, and Catherine, I cannot explain it to this day. It was not a voice like you're hearing me now, but it was a masculine voice, but a very kind voice that said, you're asking the wrong question. And that question, and that statement hit me right in my determination center. It hit me right there. And I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? Now I'm curious, right? Now there's this competitive, determined part of me is now awakened. And the voice came one more time and the final time, and it said, why don't you ask how to be happy? Wow, okay, well, there's people around me that's happy. Why am I not? What are people doing that I'm not? So I Googled how to be happy. You know what came up on my screen? Crystals, Doreen Virtue, Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding. I was mad. I was so angry, thinking that this was some kind of prank. But for anyone who can relate, where you feel so unresourceful and you just don't have the answers anymore, but somehow there's an answer in front of you, it's a humbling moment. It's a very humbling moment. And I had an ego death. And I thought, well, I don't have the answer. So who am I now to judge what I'm seeing? And I started with Neil Donald Walsh. I started with crystals. I started with angels, and I just dived deeply into it. And I love the work so much. Catherine, 3 months later, I saw so many great changes in myself that I was so determined to show people how I did it. I quit my job. I quit my corporate job. I left my relationship. I left my house, 2 suitcases. I found a business partner as well. And I moved to another city, started a business by just telling people how I got my baggage together. Put a few videos on YouTube, booked out overseas for 2 years. It was incredible. It was incredible. I don't know how to explain it to this day, but it worked out so beautifully. And so as I traveled and I helped people, listen to people's challenges and it's this and it's that. Then I started hypnotherapy, and my path continued. And I started to notice as I helped people, the more advanced my work became. And I started to understand and realize, and I quit drinking and smoking as well. So that was all part of my complete restart and reset, right? And then I started working with people, and I noticed, why is it that when someone in, let's say, Canada have knee pain on the left side, and someone in Australia who have knee pain on the left side, why is it that they share the same trauma? And how they dealt with the trauma? Well, that blew my mind. Regardless of your diet, your cultural values, your beliefs, and it didn't matter. It was irrelevant. And I kept documenting this. I thought, wow, and I just kept seeing more and more correlations and algorithms just clicking into place between different people. And then someone said, have you seen the book of Louise Hay? And I said, no. So I got her book, and I looked, and I'm like, wow, this is so great, but there's a few things missing, it's like, it's incomplete. And so I was looking, what is missing? So I filled the gaps without rewriting the work. So I just filled the gaps. And, well, not the gaps, but what else can we add to this? It was incredible how this book just exploded. Students said, why didn't you just make a manual for us in class? So I did. It used to be a manual. And then someone said, why don't you self-publish or get a publisher? So I just ended up, publishers wanted to change the book too much. I said, no, you can't change my clients' stories. And so I self-published, and this book went wild. It's sold in 80 countries. It's used in hospitals, universities, psychiatrists, psychologists, body workers, anyone just who wants to learn more about what's happening in their body and what's the messages. How do we decode that? Because one thing that's so powerful about what I learned is that the way that the body stores trauma, there's specific points in the body where emotions land, depending on what type of trauma it is, combined with the belief that you have and how you cope from it. Oh, wow. And now and this is the same for everyone. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, if that's what it means, does that mean that there's an algorithm then to shift it? And that's when I developed metaphysical anatomy technique and started teaching that across the world. And that's how my journey started. This is how my book started, and my journey with determination started, and how I went from being a wounded, determined person to an ease and grace determined person. I can still get the same amount of work done, but I don't have this life and death urgency in me anymore. This is now, I love what I do, one step at a time and one breath at a time. And it's amazing.
It is amazing, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Have you got a copy of the book there with you now?
I do. Yes, it's this
You
one, and
hold
it's
it
on its
up.
way. On its way to you. So it's a big one.
I just
So I
want
have
people viewing this, I want them to see this incredible book.
Of course.
Um,
So this one is for adults. That's for adults, and it has 722 medical elements and the emotions that impact them and the psychosomatic patterns. And then I have one for children as well, which is Your Ancestry is Talking, Are You Listening? And that one has over 400 elements.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have 20 other books as well.
Congratulations. And did you, this is a personal question, did you then find a more suitable partner somewhere along the way?
Catherine, I did. I did. I actually met him in Bali. I was pouting and just having my spit spat and my pity party about, how I'm not finding the right person. And, I was also now divorced, that everything just fell apart. And then I met him. And I'm telling you, we've now been together 8 years. We're married. We have 2 wonderful children. And I finally have a man that doesn't drink. He's in the 8 years that we've been together, he's never raised his voice at me. He taught me how to peacefully dismantle arguments and how to be graceful and how to be calm. He's also a qualified diplomat. So I think that added a lot to the why and the how, right? That he started his own business. He followed his heart. But I absolutely found someone incredible, which for me was finally testament of how far I have come in my healing journey.
Well,
I felt like that was just the universe and the angels just saying, you did it, Evette. We got there.
fantastic.
We got there.
I just felt that, with I felt like, I can almost feel like the listeners behind me going, yes, but this final piece, did you find the right person? And you did.
I did. And he taught me about communication. He taught me about grace. Like, we can be angry, but let's have grace. Let's have grace. There's emotions. There's a lot of fire, but if we want to deal with something in a constructive way, then we need to be able to be in a headspace to constructively communicate. Otherwise, there's just a screaming match. And for what purpose? Right? And he's like, for what purpose? And I'm like, I don't know. Right? So, it's true. I don't know. For the sake of fighting, and like, no, I don't want that either. I don't want that. I grew up with a father who screamed. I had partners who screamed. I'm allergic to screaming. I don't want it. So we have to match what we want, right?
Well, you have alchemized and metabolized and transformed so many things in your life so far. I'm excited,
Catherine.
I'm excited to see where it goes over the next 10, 20, 30 years, because you're still
Me too.
right in the prime. You've still got so much more time left for what you're going to be doing, which is so exciting. And I feel like you brought such an incredible gift to the world, in your work.
Bless. I hope so.
And also in your story, which is just that human, oh yes, I can resonate, I can resonate, I can resonate, I can resonate. And that's just so, so beautiful.
Yeah, no, I'm not shy to share, what has happened. And even, sometimes now I have my moments, but I'm so much better when I do have my moment. And if I do have time in that moment, I will just put 20 minutes aside and I will immediately process. I will dissect what was going on. What did I not understand? What did I misfire? And I'll just do a healing on myself. And so what I find is, when we don't do that self-love, self-care on a regular basis, this is where things pile up, and that's where they escalate. So I don't get to the point where I escalate because I don't allow it to pile up. So because I diffuse as it's happening. And so as it's happening and you continue to diffuse, you start to teach your nervous system how to live without these patterns, right? So over time, it just becomes a nice flow.
Beautiful. So if people would like to, let's tell people where they can find you, for one thing.
Of course.
Which is,
Of course.
you've given me the name of the website, which is
metaphysicalanatomy.com.
metaphysicalanatomy.com. And that will be in the show notes. So if people would like to, obviously they can get your book, which I can see that you could actually use that book as a Bible for the rest of your life, which is,
people will love it.
how else can people connect with you, work with you? have access to your beautiful gifts?
Yes, of course. So just metaphysicalanatommy.com. My sessions are there. My books are there. I also have a free book, Restoring the Emotional Body. That's on my homepage. It's completely free. So you can grab your free copy there too. And it comes with meditations. So that's also a fun free gift.
Oh, beautiful. So let me ask you something kind of on behalf of, I feel like obviously there's a lot going on in the world, and at the very least you can say it's interesting.
Oh,
Okay. And I personally feel there's a lot of people out there who are trying to be part of the solution. And some of those people are leaders, and some are parents, and some are community leaders, and all sorts of different kinds of people trying to be part of the solution. And some of them are exhausted, and some of them are stressed, some of them are feeling great. Is there something you'd like to say to those people? Because sometimes some of those people tune into this podcast.
so based on what I'm just hearing from you, the first thing that I would say is stop trying to be the solution, just be it. We lose energy in trying because when we keep trying, there's something in us that doesn't feel worthy of doing what we're doing. There's something within us that doesn't feel worthy of feeling received by people who love our energy, who love our work. There's a missing element there that causes a person to feel, I have to give more, I have to push more, I need to work harder. You don't need to do anything. Just be the solution. Stop trying and embody it. And I think this is where I also learned, and I'm sharing this from my own personal experience, because this is where I started to have more energy during my client sessions. I could only normally do 2 to 3 sessions a day because, I mean, this is trauma recovery work. I mean, this is heavy duty stuff. Or sometimes I help people with phobias or fears, and it doesn't matter. But I would be exhausted because I tried to give so much, because I always felt what I'm doing, what I'm giving is not enough. The person deserves more. And it's because I didn't value myself. I couldn't see my worth. And I had such an attachment to needing to see how I contribute to people's lives and the world, that if I didn't get that validation, that I would do more. And this is where I learned that to have that innate self-love and that self-compassion, to know that I know that every session I give my best, and the energy that I give people is my best, and it's good enough, and it's enough.
Yeah, that is such wise words. And when you just said that, I thought, yeah, of course, all of us, when we're working with clients, we are doing our best. Of course we are.
Yes,
That's
that's why we do what we do. We love it.
Just reminding ourselves of that is just so beautiful and so powerful. So this has been a great conversation. I could talk to you for hours, honestly.
Me too.
We've talked about an awful lot today in this
We do.
short period of time. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation for you, Evette?
I think the favorite part of our conversation was actually this part here where you asked me about people out there who not want to be, who are leaders, and even those who's working towards it, right? At the end of the day, every single person is already a leader. You are a leader in your life. And if you become a leader in another area, you're just expanding that leadership. So remember that for anyone, no matter where you are in your life, no matter what the circumstances, you might not feel it, but you are already that leader. And you know what's even more great about it? We try so hard to be perfect, but did you know that you are perfect at being you?
Wow. Well, I think that's a perfect way to wind up the conversation. This has been such a joy. Thank you so much for everything you're doing, and my love to your clients and your family, and had a fantastic evening. Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to say thank you to all the listeners and everybody watching, because this is a very strong journey that Evette's been on, and she's just taken us with her for some of it. So you may find you just want to settle a little bit before you dash into your next thing after watching or listening to this show. And maybe have a glass of water, a little bit of fresh air. because this is very potent stuff. Do get the book and do check in with metaphysicalanatomy.com. And there's so much juicy wonderfulness there. And if you want to know more about me and what I'm doing, go to beingspace.world. And if you want to know more about the podcast and episodes, go to truthandtranscendence.com. Have a beautiful week. And thanks again to Evette Rose.